There we go. So ECE 103, I just can't believe we're already in our next course. This is Child Growth and Development, week 1, and I'd like for you to take a little gander at this little kiddo in the middle of the screen. This sweet, sweet baby right there is in a video that is called Babies, the Documentary. Have any of you guys seen that movie? No? If you ever get a chance, guys, watch it. Babies, the Documentary. It follows, and I used to use this a lot when I taught on-ground courses because it follows 4 different babies through basically the first year of their life, and they're all in 4 different countries, and it shows where they're born, how they're fed, the toys that they have, how they're raised, and it's really amazing to be able to compare child rearing in different cultures. And this documentary really doesn't have a lot of dialogue going on. It's mainly just you're watching the parents and the children interact. So it's really interesting. It's really relaxing to watch. And it really puts the spotlight on this little baby. I can't remember specifically what region, but he was from Africa. There was one from Mongolia. There was a baby from the United States, and then a baby from Japan. And to see the differences. And at the very end, in my on-ground classes, we would talk about who looks to be the happiest, and hands down, it's almost always this little guy right here. He just plays in the dirt, he giggles, he has a good time. His toys are bones and rocks, and always has that beautiful smile on his face. So anyway, if you ever get a chance, I'm wanting to say I have seen it on Netflix from time to time. I know you can order the DVD through Netflix if you're on the order basis with watching them that way. So I highly recommend it. Okay. Oh goodness, I don't have my announcements page in here. What happened? Well, let's just back up then. Really quick, of course, we're in week 1. You've probably noticed that it follows the same format as our previous courses. I do that for a reason. Each time we start a new class, I want you to feel comfortable in it. I don't want you to feel like you have to get used to a new way of doing things, or a different form of grading, or different types of assignments even. I want it to be fairly consistent. I think that really helps out in the online area. So of course we have discussion boards that were due Wednesday by midnight. Most other assignments are due by Sunday by midnight, and we're going to start off our course like we normally do as well and talk about the final project. So in this one, you're going to be creating a developmental flyer. And just kind of a show of hands, let me know, have any of you had experiences with developing flyers or handouts on the computer? Kyle, you have? Of course you have. Wonderful. What about Marilyn, Opal, Patty? Have you guys ever made a flyer before? Patty has. Okay. Okay, great. Great. Well, I have to tell you, Kyle, no? I have to tell you, I'm not looking for professional grade flyers, but I'm looking for a good start on creating a developmental flyer that you may be able to hand out in a classroom. So I want you to picture yourself as a classroom teacher. You get to pick the age group. So you'll see here, developmental flyer to be handed out to parents that they can take home and read and refer to as needed, because you're not just teaching the child, you're teaching the family as well, and you're passing along some of this great information that you're learning as we go. So you choose the age group. I want you to have in mind an age group. Anywhere from infant up to 8 years old. That tends to be the upper end of early childhood. You pick an age group that you're either drawn to, that you think you may actually be in the classroom with someday, or that you are in a classroom with. And it needs to be at least 1 page. Sometimes you have to extend it to 2, though, depending on how you set up your information. You should include a minimum of 3 sentences for each of these categories. Important things parents should know about children this age. So, pretend like you're doing it for 2-year-olds. You think of at least 3 things, 3 sentences, what you think the parents need to know. 3 sentences minimum of how the children should be developing, what children this age are learning, any safety concerns with this age group, again 3 sentences, activities parents should do with children this age, and you want to focus on developmental activities that might help them along, signs of any developmental delays, and then any other information that you consider very important for this age group. Now, you can set this flyer up in columns if you want. If you've ever gone into Word, you'll see that there's several different templates for flyers you're welcome to use. Or you can have it just as a straight handout in sentence form. Be sure and add bullets, make it short, easy to read bits of information. You don't want to have paragraphs because busy parents like to be able to skim over that information and get the information they need quickly. So here is, let me see, an example. Now this isn't one that one of my students has put together. This is just an example of a developmental flyer that I found on the internet. You could definitely use it as a guide though. So at the top it's got a catchy name, Your Child at 2 Years. So you pick your age group, however. It's got a spot for the child's name, their age, and today's date, sort of as a reminder. So this talks about what your child's currently doing, some of the milestones that you might see, what most children do at this age. It's broken down into social and emotional, language, cognitive, movement, and physical. That one can hardly be seen, sorry. And then over here it says, act early by talking to your child's doctor if your child does this, 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 or this. So these are signs of possible developmental delays. And so, and it's even got a 1-800 number and a website for the CDC so that they can get more information. So you guys get the idea of what I'll be looking for here. You think you can do this? A developmental flyer. You've got 4 weeks to do it, so plenty of time to research and decide what age group you'd like to do, right? And please contact me if you have any questions. And if you come upon, if you're really reluctant on creating a flyer, please know that there's lots of how-to videos on YouTube that will show you how to do those step by step. Like I said, this one's pretty fancy. It doesn't have to look like this. It can be more simple. But I do want it to be eye-catching. You could change your color of your font, add a picture, add some graphics. You want it to be eye-catching, okay? Here we go. Final project continued. Be creative and develop something that a parent would be interested to look at and read. It shouldn't be boring. Use a minimum of 3 pieces of clip art or graphics. Okay, at least 3. And hopefully pick things that sort of have a theme to it that are tied together, not just 3 random pieces of clip art. For example, if you're using actual photos, be sure and go ahead and use 3 photos. So that ties them together. Make it visually interesting and of good quality. Be sure to use a program that is My Course Connection compatible, very important. So please use Word, Google Docs, Publisher. You could use Google Slides as well. It's I know Google Slides isn't something you would necessarily use to print out that flyer, but it's kind of an easier environment to be able to manipulate where your text is and where your graphics are. Does that make sense? It's a little more free-flowing because Word can sometimes be hard in dealing with that. So just be sure and use one of these, because I have had students in the past turn things in that I couldn't pull up at all. And they spent hours and hours on it, and then I wasn't able to see it. So be sure and use appropriate software. Final project. Here's the grading rubric. And this is located in week 4 as well, so be sure and glance at this. Providing a creative, colorful, and visually stimulating flyer with 3 pieces of clip art is worth 40 points. Providing 5 categories of specific information with at least 3 sentences each, 50 points. Providing organized, clear work free from punctuation, grammar, and spelling errors, 10 points. And additionally, if you use resources, be sure and cite those resources as well. Okay? You feel like you're ready to go now? You're ready to make that developmental flyer, I know. Woo! I can feel the excitement. Okay, student question of the week. Will Career Services help me with my job search after graduation? And they most certainly will. Guys, I've had several graduates in the last few weeks contact us. I have one lady that she graduated in December. She started a job with ECE, and she's decided she'd like to look for another center that fits her a little better. So she came up to CCC, to the Career Services Department. They helped her update her resume. They made her several copies of that resume on resume paper, and they're actively helping her in the job search. So please know that after you graduate, we don't just push you aside. We're still there for you. So yes, come on up. Also, if you're a current student and you're looking for job positions right now, if you go to My Course Connection and you click on the tab that says Home, normally you just see the information that goes along with the courses on that page, but if you arrow down, you'll see a job hunt search area that Career Services puts up. I think they update it weekly with jobs in our area, and because we have employers that contact us every week looking for students that are getting ready to graduate in certain areas. So there's always that demand there. So check that out sometime. It's on My Course Connection on the home page. We want you to find that job. Alrighty, principles of growth and development. We're going to go over just a little bit about early brain development, and this just fascinates me. Brain development occurs rapidly during the first year and even before the child is born. Poor nutrition before and after birth interferes with infant brain development. We know that. I know, isn't that a sweet baby, Patty? Oh, and that little binky. Infants are born with millions of brain cells, many more than they will need or ever use. And one of the things that we do as early childhood educators is we try to activate those brain cells. An interesting fact, babies develop taste preference in the womb. Amniotic fluid, the fluid that the babies are sort of floating around in, becomes flavored by whatever mom eats. And babies are born with a preference for certain foods. So they can actually taste those foods via the amniotic fluid. Isn't that funny, Patty? I know my mom says that's why I love cheese so much, because she ate a lot of cheese with me. And she ate liver and onions with my brother and sister, and I cannot stand liver and onions, but they love it. They love it. So they've done lots of different studies with this, and they have actually proven by using some pretty strong flavors of mothers eating that the babies show a preference for these foods. So my daughter, for every prenatal checkup we went to, we had Mexican food. She loves Mexican food. For my son, we switched it up and did Chinese food. He loves Chinese food. So, and my daughter can't stand Chinese food. So there we go. It really is a fact. Early brain development, neural connections form between the cells as a result of learning. It's sort of like a webbing in a way. Proceed rapidly during these early years. So we know that early years are so important. There's a certain amount of plasticity in the brain very early on, so a child is very flexible and receptive to different types of learning. But there's also a process going on called pruning. So it's the gradual elimination of these unused cells and these connections that have not been used or connected. So that starts fairly early on. That's why early stimulation, early education is so important. We want to save all those little connections. Some strategies to promote early learning. This is what you're doing as an early childhood educator. You want to provide a very language-rich environment. So extra talking. Even if the baby cannot talk, you can talk to them about how the day is going, what it looks like outside. I actually saw or I heard an interview on NPR just a few days ago that was talking about the idea of teaching basically like sex education or consent to small kids, the importance of, and to babies, the importance of teaching them the importance of consent. And one of the things that they brought up is when you're changing a baby's diaper, you should say, I'm getting ready to change your diaper, is that okay? So I had never really thought of that before. But it's important that we start this very early on to show them that their feelings matter. Now, I don't know what I would do if my child said, no, you can't change my diaper, but at least we are talking to them. Read often to children, several times a day. Just get that magic number in your head of how many books you're going to read a day to your children. Most preschool and kindergarten programs try to do at least 2 to 3 books a day. And then whatever you do at home as well is just like bonus books. Label all the actions and the objects in the room, talk about them. Provide explanations and descriptions of things that are happening. If you're cooking, you can talk about your cooking. Don't just do it in silence. Talk about what you're doing. Sing songs, even if you can't sing. I'm in that group. Do lullabies. I had a huge book of nursery rhymes that I would read to mine when they were little. And dance with the baby or the young child, because that's movement, but that's also providing that language-rich environment as well. Okay, our 6 basic domains in development, this is talked about in your chapters, are physical, motor, perceptual, cognitive, speech and language, social and emotional. So those are our 6 basic domains that we want to focus on. You know, it's hard to go, okay, we're going to touch on these every day, and this is how we're going to do it, but it can be done with careful lesson planning. You just have to think about it. And if you look on the internet, you will see lesson plans that have sort of a column down the side that lists the 6 domains. So that sort of helps jog your memory when you're doing your planning to be sure that you're touching on these domains each day or each week. Physical growth and development results from genetic and environmental interactions. It's important that we don't push the development. If they aren't ready to stand, we don't want to make them stand. If they're not ready to walk, we don't want to push that. We want it to come along naturally at its own pace. There's nothing wrong with playing or encouraging a little bit, but certainly don't focus on that. It shouldn't be the main thing. Influence development in other domains. Muscle strength, of course, they're developing with age. Function, coordination. The older they get, the more coordinated they become. Cognitive abilities, the ability to recall directions that you've given them, problem solving. perception, and then the ability to use sensory information as well. So all of these go together. They're all tied together. Motor development. When we're talking about infants, newborn babies, they have a lot of involuntary or reflexive moves. So the moving of the arms and the legs is largely involuntary and reflexive. So if you take a newborn and you hold something like a rattle in front of their face, they're not necessarily going to be able to intentionally grab that rattle. They might accidentally, but they can't have their hand move towards that rattle. The reason being with a newborn is those connections have not been made yet. Those nerve endings are still growing. In fact, with babies, they don't really know that their arms and legs are their own. And if you've seen a newborn kind of hanging out before, you've probably noticed that they can startle themselves by moving their arm or kicking their legs. They're like, whoa, what just happened? They don't even realize it's theirs. So, involuntary and reflexive. As far as motor development goes, though, there's 3 basic ways that they develop. Cephalocaudal is head to toe, so that's the way we see it develop. Proximodistal is center or from the belly and then out to the extremities. So they may know that little belly's theirs. They may know their head is sort of connected, but then that development has to branch out to the arms and to the legs, to the extremities. And then refinement is increasing improvement in ability, dexterity, precision, coordination. So maybe they then be able to grasp that rattle on purpose, not just accidentally. And as they develop even further, they can use those fine motor skills to grasp with the fingertips, and they realize they are theirs and that they can make that move on their own. Perceptual development, or what they're sort of seeing and taking in around them, addresses their sensory information. Multisensory development is the ability to recognize information from multiple senses, from eyes, from ears, from mouth, from nose, taking all those in and tying them together and creating something out of it. Habituation is the ability to focus on specific sensory input. So maybe they hear music. Well, before they're really locked into it, it's just something in the background. But you'll notice it when children start to really hear that music and focus on it. And that's when they start dancing around to it and having a good time. Sensory integration is the ability to act on sensory information. So realizing something's cold or hot, realizing that something's really loud or maybe too soft. Okay? So perceptual development. Speech and language depends on maturation and understanding of symbolic representation. So we start this very early on in our homes or in our classrooms. When we are giving labels to things, that's helping them build their symbolic representation library that they have in their brain. Consists of gestures, both spoken and written communication. Of course, they're not going to understand that written communication at 1 or 2, but they will start to understand it at 3, 4, and 5. Receptive language develops initially, just kind of understanding what's being said, but they can't necessarily repeat the words. And then expressive language follows, where they can actually communicate with another person or another child. And expressive language, what it kind of makes me think of, have you guys seen the videos of twin infants talking or twin toddlers talking? It's like they develop their own language and they can understand each other even though maybe we can't. They know what's going on. Social and emotional development, and this is so important right here, guys, is having nurturing and consistent caregivers, I want you to pay particular attention to that third word if you include and, consistent. A lot of children just don't have consistency in their life. I've seen it happen before with infants, with toddlers, with young children that don't really have a schedule. They don't know who might be taking care of them from day to day. Maybe they're passed around to different family members or different friends. And I have to tell you guys, from very early on, they realize this. And this consistency is what they need. Inconsistency creates a child that's very distrustful because they don't know who to believe. They don't know what's going on in their life. And they don't develop as well in the area of attachment. So they need to trust the adults in their life. They need to feel secure with the adults in their life. And in that process, then it allows them to be able to reach out to explore their environment, build their self-esteem, build their self-confidence. I've seen examples of this before where you can tell a child is frustrated due to non-consistent caregivers. An example of this is you may have seen 1 or 2 year olds that when they're mad, for whatever reason, maybe they're cranky, they do this move where they throw their head back. Sometimes it's being thrown back at the caregiver that's holding them, and you may think it's that they're trying to hurt you, but it's really the idea of this child being frustrated because they don't trust that person. There's not the trust there. And this may even be a family member. This may even be the actual parent. But it's showing that this child needs a little more consistency in their life. So we include in our social and emotional development, we want to develop this attachment. We also want to teach them about social rules, gender roles, cultural expectations, and it's very necessary for these children to establish autonomy in their life, to be able to explore that environment on their own. I really like this saying about attachment. What is best for the child is not always what is most convenient for the parent. That's by Bonnie Bedford. And this isn't just parents, it's also any caregiver that is taking care of a child that maybe you don't want to hold them right then, or maybe you're busy and they're needing some attention. You have to realize that they are the most important thing right now. Stop what you're doing, increase that level of attachment, make that child trust you, make that child feel more secure. And in an early childhood environment, that can also go by, well, maybe you're talking to a parent, maybe you're talking to a coworker, maybe you're picking something up. What you can do is help involve that child in that process, or simply picking them up so that they feel that their needs are being met. My example of this is when my first child was born, and she was very colicky. In the evening, between 5 and 7 o'clock every night, she would start crying. And it would last about 2 hours. And I did everything that I could think of. I called the doctor. We gave medicines. I cut foods out of my diet. And I was at my wit's end because every night I knew my child was going to be crying, and my mommy sense told me she's in pain. Something's going on. I don't know what it is, but the doctors would give me ideas to treat the symptoms, but not find the cure. So as a parent, I had to do that work. They would say, take her for a ride in the car, or she'll fall asleep. Well, she would, but then she'd wake up and cry. Put her in her car seat, put her in her swing, give her these gas drops. So finally, I was talking to another mom, and she said, you know what? I had to cut wheat out of my diet. And when it did, my child's colicky went away. And sure enough, the next day I cut wheat out of my diet. It was 50% better that evening. and by the second day, it was completely gone. So other parents may have gone the route of, oh, she's just spoiled, let her cry it out. Well, I knew that that wasn't getting anything done. So sometimes you have to trust that instinct, and sometimes you have to do the things that maybe is not convenient, because it was not convenient for me to cut wheat out of my diet. That's really hard. I know some of you guys may have done this before, because gluten intolerance is very, we know a lot more about it. My daughter grew out of it in 2 years, and now we're good to go. But I want you to just kind of think about that as far as attachment goes. Okay? So any questions for the night? We finished in 30 minutes. We had kind of a short chapter, and you guys keep on keeping on. No, ma'am? Well, wonderful. You guys have a good rest of your week. Get the rest of your assignments in by Sunday at midnight. I keep telling my other classes, don't treat anything as optional. Do everything. Don't skip anything, because every point counts, right? Thank you, and have a good night, Patty. Opal, Marilyn. I'm glad you guys came tonight. Good night, Opal.